Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 36 of Deep in the Novo. I'm Ryan Novozinsky, joined here, as always, by Sudeep Tumma. And today we're going to be reviewing, or not reviewing, we're going to be previewing, looking ahead to OSU versus Miami in the Cheez-it Bowl. This is interesting because
The Cheez-it Bowl. The Cheez-it Bowl is interesting.
The Cheez-it Bowl is fascinating. Used to be the Cactus Bowl, as everyone knows. Used to be the Motel 6 Cactus Bowl, and is now the Cheez-it Bowl, and is my favorite thing. Although I think their demands are a little bit high if somebody wants a T-shirt or a hat from them. I think they're.
Hey, all they asked you was for 21,000 retweets.
Oh yeah, go ahead and get me some.
I didn't say I wanted to, but you can.
No, they're terrible though. Their demands are high, but their demands for a great game is high too. This is an interesting factoid here.
Oh God.
This is the only ranked matchup outside of the New Year's Six Bowls.
That's right.
That's fascinating.
That is fascinating. Two very good teams.
You look at these teams like all across the board. You have some teams that are like 3-win teams in their in some of these bowl games. You got Tennessee was going to be in a bowl game for crying out loud. But now you have a very good matchup in this Cheez-it Bowl, and usually sometimes they'll have good matchups here and there. But yeah. Here we go with this one right here, Miami versus OSU. You get a ranked matchup. You get number 18 Miami. You get a team that has a great quarterback, a great young head coach. And you look at this offense, it's something that sticks out to me as being very impressive, while also having its flaws. Because that offensive line, it struggled last year. It's struggling this year too a little bit. And some of these issues just are super prevalent.
Yeah, you talk about the offensive line. That's definitely the first thing, right? You talk about their struggles this year and run blocking struggles, pass blocking, and a lot of it gets, you don't realize until you really study it. It gets soaked up by Derek King and his talent, right? I mean, you think about this guy transferred from Houston, and obviously he was a very good quarterback at Houston, but I think he's really taken a step forward this year. And man, he is an awesome quarterback. I mean, you talk about his arm first off. He's got a very quick release. And then he's got great zip on the ball, great velocity, great arm strength. You can throw the ball down the field. You can throw it all three levels. He's got a little bit, some ball placement issues down the field a little bit, and overall some accuracy, more ball placement issues. But overall, he's a very quality quarterback, and that's just the passing. But you talk about the running. That's really where this guy makes his money, right? As a dual threat guy, he is a very fast runner. I think he might be one of the fastest quarterbacks in the country. And then he's also strong. That's what makes him, a little bit unique, where he's very elusive when he's running. He can, make a move and get past you, but he can also run through you. And this offense utilizes that so well, where they run so many design runs, QB power, QB counter constantly, and they really mesh it up. You see it. You can see the design a lot with the short passing game. You see a lot of those, slants and hitches and short routes, but you see a lot of screen game, the bubble screens to the outside. That's where they utilize a lot, and you see that where you'll see 1-2 screens every after 2 drives or 2 plays in a row, and then suddenly a third one it'll be like a fake screen and then a QB counter all the way, and it works because you watch the play after, you see the safeties bailing that side, you see the boxes really light, and suddenly it works. And the offensive flow, the design is really well with their new offensive coordinator. They run a good offense there. They got some weapons outside. And Derek King is really the catalyst for all of this, and he is I think it's easy to say he's one of the best quarterbacks in college football.
He is, no doubt about it. And remember all the hype he had when he was at Houston, and you saw like the transfer rumors. Man, we heard everything from OU to heck, I think even heard Alabama a little bit. This guy was a prospect, right? And you just look at it and you're thinking like, man, thank God they don't have Tate Martell out there, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
No, but this guy is legit. You're right. I mean, he makes his money off being a dual threat quarterback. His quickness is fantastic. Yeah. His ability to carry the football, to stay poised out there too is fantastic. And you're right. There's some ball placement issues. There's some accuracy issues. But I think all of that is definitely overshadowed by his ability as a runner, as a dual threat quarterback, and to just make smart football plays within the scheme that he has, that Manny Diaz has out there.
And the scheme is a big thing. Now, NFL prospects, that's a different story.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of that really has to do with size. Like when you talk about it, a lot of the drawbacks really have to do with just his size, which has nothing to do with how good of a college quarterback he is, can be, and is. where he can. You're right. I mean, you see some of the pocket presence. It's smart, and then they just utilize his skill set so perfectly. The scheme is good, and you get the ball into playmakers' hands. You got a great, great players out here. You really do. The run game is a struggle, and that it's an offensive line issue sometimes with this team. That's the difficult thing, and Miami is definitely hoping for it to be better. But the fact that Miami was up to 10 in the country, and a lot of that had to do with Derrick King's arms and legs.
Yeah, it definitely did. When you look at, I agree with you. I think the run game is definitely the biggest struggle for this team. I mean, when you look at it and you break it down, you see that Derrick King is the second leading rusher in the team, and that's a testament to him. That's a testament to his performance as a quarterback, and
Right.
just his play style. But it's also like when I see teams like TCU, and how, gosh,
Max Duggan.
Max
Yep.
Duggan was the leading rusher on their team and stuff like that. It's good and it's bad because it's like a little odd to me.
Yeah.
It depends on the fit. It depends on what's happening. But I don't think this is a fit thing. I think this is if they could be a running team, they would be, because
Sure.
because of how much this offensive line, they struggle sometimes. And I cannot stress this enough. I remember this going back. Gosh, this was probably almost a year and a half ago now when we talk about Miami's offensive line. They were so young a year and a half ago, and now even now people are still saying they're inexperienced and young, and it's so odd to me because it's like you think oh, this is a team. It could be like Tulsa where that was a young line, but they developed. And how I think OSU is going to develop now that Josh Sills is coming back apparently.
Yeah.
Um, and where they have their early struggles, but then they prosper through. They have great performances, and I saw that from Tulsa. I don't see that from Miami at all. And if anything, they've gotten maybe a little bit worse.
Yeah, exactly. We talked about Baylor's struggles, right, in that last game, and I really
Yes.
wonder how OSU kind of matches up with this one because we talk about this D line for OSU, and they're not like Oklahoma where they've got these feisty elite guys, but they've got a lot of really solid guys. Some guys were really good, right on the tip of that, but they're deep too. And you don't need to be elite when you're going up against that type of line, right? I mean, you'd
Right.
like to be, but you just talk about it, and you saw what Brock Martin and Trace Ford obviously. I mean, we'd assume isn't playing, but you just talk about it from Israel Antoine to Cameron Murray to Tyler Lacey, and you go too deep, and you got guys all over. You've got talented guys, and I really wonder how it's going to shape up. But and normally I'll say like, okay, this game is won in the trenches, but with how quickly they get the ball out of Derrick King's hands, and also his ability to make plays with his legs, I really wonder how um, Jim Knowles is going to game plan for this because there's some obvious ones in terms of this is so one of the downsides of playing man coverage, although you can stick with receivers so well,
Yeah.
that when say you run everyone deep or even if you just run everyone in routes, the cornerbacks turn their heads and are chasing wide receivers, and the entire field in front of the O line is empty. So if there's a little hole where Derrick can just sneak through, he can keep going out for chunk gains. But here's the interesting thing: when you look back to Texas, who ran a lot of design runs with Sam Ehlinger, and they didn't do any of that when they played OSU
Mhm.
just because of how feisty this defense is. And I think that really had to do a factor with that. Sam Ehlinger ran a little bit, but I don't think there were, if any at all, any design runs. I really don't. There was maybe one or two, maybe. And that too, I think it was zero. I do.
I think so
Because
too.
and I think a lot of that, right, and a lot of that was a product of the OSU defense. So I wonder, Derrick King and this Miami team that's so used to, design runs,
Mhm.
and that is a lot of their offense. I wonder how they're going to play it, get the ball out of their hands quickly. Now, even without Rodarius Williams, I still think you have the ability to match up with, you know, uh, Christian Holmes on one side, Jarek Bernard Converse on the other side. Those are two very quality corners. You have these safeties. You have Thomas Harper who's playing at a great level this year. Colby Alvarado, Trey Sterling. You know who you got out there, right? Then you got Malcolm Rodriguez who can cover. You got a lot of guys, and I wonder how they're going to match up because there's two sides of the coin. When you play man defense, you have the ultimate advantage of sticking with guys better than you'll ever do in zone defense. Because no matter what you do in zone defense, you're gonna give up a hole eventually, right?
Yeah.
The hope is your blitz and your lineman can get to the quarterback before that hole develops or before the quarterback sees it. But there's always going to be holes in zone coverage. I mean, there's just no way it can't
At a
be.
time.
But the other side of the coin is if you do play man coverage and you leave those holes for Derrick King and he's just going to burn you, or do you play zone coverage where you might give a little in the pass game, but you are able to hold down Derrick King's running ability because you have guys right in front of him, or you trust your guys one-on-one coverage and have a spy or maybe two spies
Mhm.
that are watching Derrick King. But even that, you wonder that's where it comes out to the interesting thing of do you believe that Malcolm Rodriguez or Ayman Abagbumiga can bring down De'Aaron King and tackle in space? Now, I would think the answer is yes, but I'm not Jim Knowles.
You're right. There's got to be a way for him to slow it down. And when you look at some of these Miami receivers, does anybody really stick out to you? You're right. Where Darius is gone, there's some key missing people for this OSU team, key missing players. And this team is not used to that. They've had that all season long, right? So this is not some sort of new thing where it's just like, oh, get to the bowl game and all these people are missing. No, you have a team that's I guess battle tested in that regard. But do you think that will hamper OSU against any of these Miami receivers? And are there any Miami receivers that really stick out to you as a threat? Because I mean, I look at these teams and obviously, I mean, you look at D. Wiggins, you look at Mark Pope, and Mike Harley's a big one too. He's really good. Mm-hmm. But there's guys in there that this is not the best receiving team that OSU's faced all season long.
Yeah, I don't think it is. And before I answer that, just one more point on what I was talking before.
Yeah.
You change the whole complexion of that, and even the defensive linemen have to play differently. You're going to see probably, I would think, a lot more contained from the defensive ends. Just holding it, make sure De'Aaron King doesn't escape around instead of, going in full frontal pass rush, because it's going to change the complexion. But to answer your question, I think you're right. Mike Harley's the biggest one. Slot receiver. He's a very fast guy. And Miami tries to get the ball in his hands quickly, on screen passes and short passes, get the ball in his hands. And this guy's an explosive playmaker out of the slot. But look, the interesting thing I wonder is, how does this team, with their pass rush and how quickly they get into the quarterback, can they bring them down there? Can they pressure him, force errant throws? And then when the ball does come out quickly, Baylor tried to do that. They tried to get the ball out quickly. But OSU showed they're tackling, they're swarming, which Baylor did so well. Their ability, their sideline to sideline speed, OSU's, they could get to those receivers, get to those guys, whoever had the ball in their hands, get them and bring them down quickly, which is a huge advantage because you're able to stop, the attack right where it is and keep it from going any worse, which is big for OSU. And I think it's like you saw it, right? Obviously, there was no Tyquan Thornton for Baylor, but RJ Steen is a very talented guy who was essentially neutralized because you can cover enough down the field. When your pass rush is getting there, you need to get the ball out of your hands very quickly. And you just talk about the personnel. Try to throw it deep. Colby Harville-Peel is, one of the best ball hawks in college football. And he hasn't had that much of an impact this year. Yeah, he has, because you just watch down the field. You don't want to throw it there because more games than not, we've seen guys not try to attack down the field because Colby Harville-Peel is right there. When they do attack, he's not playing deep coverage. He's playing single coverage while everyone's stuck single coverage, zero blitz, right? That's what you've seen from this team because this guy is so crazy down that way. And Mike Harley's big one. D. Wiggins a little bit. You can see he's a good route runner on some of those slants, but I wonder how they're going to kind of stick because one that I really like is Brevin Jordan. He's a very talented tight end.
He is, yeah.
An athletic tight end, a guy who they can, like Jimmy Graham, right? You can split out wide. Another Miami tight end, I hope, because otherwise that sounds really stupid. But another guy where you could just split out wide. He's so athletic. He's a very good receiver down the field. In short, you can throw a screen to him. I mean, he's that kind of guy. So he's another one I wonder because OSU is not like the reason that this defense is so great is they're deep, they're talented, but they're also versatile. You have so many guys who can play so many different things. You can bring safety to the box because they're strong enough. You can put linebackers in coverage because they're fast enough. It's the type of things that you always talk about, like, okay, yeah, you have a really good tight end. You match up with linebackers and they're too slow. You match up with safeties and they're too small. OSU can do both, right? You put a safety. We've seen Trey Sterling cover Charlie Kolar. Now, obviously, you gave up a little bit here and there, but anyone will, right? Trey Sterling did as good a job as anyone really can. And it's that kind of thing where OSU can match up. And I think with Brevin Jordan, maybe you see Malcolm Rodriguez on him some. You probably see Trey Sterling on him some, assuming he's playing. And it's interesting because I think this Miami team has a little bit, like I said, some weapons here and there. But I wonder how their approach kind of becomes. That short passing game has been big for them. I wonder if that really sticks in this game.
Yeah, it's been huge for them. You talked about the bubble screens earlier too, right. And you're right. There's short little passes here and there that they really thrive on. It's would you even equate it a little bit to West Virginia to an extent? I mean, just like
they ran a lot of crossing routes. So so it's like it's similar, right? In terms of attack the short passing game, but that was a lot more in the limitation of Jared Diggy's arm and the fact that it's hard for him to go vertical. Now De'Aaron King can throw it down the field, and I think that short passing game sets up the long game. But even that's difficult because you try to go long on obviously no Rodarius, but Jared Converse and Tristan Holmes, and that's difficult as well. And like you said, I mean, West Virginia had some very talented receivers, like 4 of them, right? 5 of them, maybe.
Mhm.
No, I just don't think OSU matches up really well, and that's the interesting thing here.
I think so too, right? And you're right. It's a good matchup through and through, and it's one that I'm excited for sure because you see some of these teams, you see the way that they attack against OSU, and it's just
Mhm.
fun to see how Jim Knowles counters it because he always counters it to a great extent. Can we talk a little bit about what the hell happened 10 days ago?
Yeah,
10 days ago, we're recording this on December 22nd. Miami went and played a game against UNC. And the final score, okay, this is not a typo, was 62-26. Um, UNC's a good team. Miami's a very good team. Um, and they're five spots apart in the rankings. Why? How? Where? When?
at the moment it was Miami number 10 and UNC
Yeah.
17, and UNC was slipping badly, and Miami was, besides Clemson, they were killing it.
Yeah.
But the number that sticks out to me, if I got my number right, 554 rushing
Yes.
yards. And I come back and I watched those runs, and it was big run after big run. I mean, that's the only way you get to 500 something. I mean, think about 500 rushing yards. Oh my god! If you have 300, that's like nuclear.
Mhm.
And 500, I was like, oh my god, that's just ridiculous. You go back and watch it, and here's what I saw. Obviously, you have a good UNC line that's blocking well, but for Miami, when they had, Jalen Phillips and Quincy Roach, and they had their, personnel, and we'll talk about those two guys later. But when you had that sort of personnel, and the guys in the middle too, Jonathan Ford, you got some good guys in the middle who can, gain some traction. But the way they were attacking this UNC running backs were just flawed from a fundamental standpoint,
Mhm.
where they were overrunning blocks, where it was, power runs, counter runs to one side, and these guys were just overrunning blocks where, at times it's not just, we think about defensive linemen and even defensive tackles, we think they're doing always a good job by just, block shedding and getting to a running back and bringing him down, right? Or
Yeah.
getting to a quarterback and bringing a guy down. But sometimes it's just about gap control. It's about discipline. It's about holding your blocks to let the linebackers do their job, right? And if you don't, everything goes haywire.
Yeah.
And a lot of times what you saw was guys overrunning their blocks, getting too antsy, getting past them. And it looked like, okay, yeah, they're getting penetration. But the offensive linemen are smart and they realize, okay, yeah, he's about to get past me or he's doing too much. Let me start sliding him one way. And then
Mhm.
suddenly you see a hole open. But the problem is once you see that, you have linemen, as you see that, power run to the right, you see linemen and their job is to get to the second level and block off the linebackers. And the linebackers, I think, also did a horrible job by, Bradley King and Zach McCloud and these guys, they did a horrible job by, staying way too far back in the second level. So by the time, they got to their gaps late, or if they just got to them, there are already linemen who weren't needing to, hold those defensive linemen down because they were all running blocks, and those offensive linemen would get to the second level and just knock out those, Zach McCloud and Bradley Jennings, those linebackers, and suddenly the hole is wide open.
Yeah.
And aside from the fact that all that happened, just on a pure basis, North Carolina might have the best rushing game in college football. These
Mhm.
running backs, these are lethal. So if you let them get to the second level unblocked, untouched, you are screwed. You are. And the fact that Miami did that and let those blocks get there, and then suddenly the running backs are there, and no one was going to touch them. No safety, no cornerback, no anything.
Yeah.
And you saw that same thing over and over and over again. Then other plays, there was a lack of contain on the outside because guys were just getting too antsy. And those little things will just explode the whole thing. And that's what you saw from UNC, just blowing it up. And there you just have no chance.
And this is, like you said, this is a talented USC or UNC team rather too.
Right.
And it's much like OSU. You're right, like with some gap contain type of deals where there was some sort of little nuances.
But this was worse.
Those were
Yeah.
repeated and repeated. What
Exactly.
much more to OSU's extent?
Because when we talk about the ones with OSU time and time again, it's always just one guy very minorly out of place, right? Just a little bit of, got out of a little bit. It was completely fundamental on every level. And that was the big problem on every level. When you have that sort of thing, you're just screwed.
Yeah, and you know what? Does it give you confidence for this OSU team going forward that's maybe something like this could happen against Miami, especially without those two big defensive ends?
Yeah, I think that's the big key here because we talk about Jalen Phillips and Quincy Roach. Those are, debatably their best two defensive players, and I think it's a pretty good debate, pretty easy debate,
Yeah.
because those, I mean, Jalen Phillips, both of them are like big stack men. There, you see them how they get penetration, pressure every single play. They can stop you in the run game. They are very talented in the outside, and I think this Miami defense, when you look at their entire makeup, I think it really starts on the defensive line. That's where you see like the most production, the most talent, right? Because they can stop the run, do enough, and play good Miami defense from that point onward.
Mhm.
And you lose those two guys and it becomes different. Now, obviously, I don't know much about these redshirt freshmen that are about to step up, but they've done a little bit here and there. They've got a few tackles for loss, few tackles, but it's hard to judge, right? But I think that I wonder how those backups are going to play, and that's really going to be a big factor here, because we talk about how OSU's defense matches up. Now, the advantage here would be if they can stymie OSU's offense, but if this O line, which has definitely played better in the past few weeks, right? I mean, much better, definitely,
Fair.
can lay blocks and get there and get these linebackers away, it'll be really interesting, because these linebackers, a lot of times they look out of sorts for me. I don't know what you've seen, but for me, it looked like they're out of sorts a lot of plays, and aren't in the right spots, and sometimes they're running to the wrong gaps. It looks like,
Mhm.
and it does make a problem, because it does start like stopping a run game always starts with your defensive line, and not just getting penetration, not just bringing tackles from your defensive line, but getting to the right spots so that your linebackers sometimes can make plays. Rerouting running backs right into the hands of your linebackers. That's how you play good defense. Now I wonder how this offensive line is going to fare there. Now I think in recent weeks we haven't seen as many power runs from this offense. It used to be a lot more, 50-50 with Chuba and last year, but now we see a lot more zone running with Dominic Richardson um, and Christian Holmes. So I wonder, but it's going to be interesting how they fare there, and see how the whole team lines up against this OSU offense.
And here's the deal with Miami too. It's much like I believe it was TCU,
Mm-hmm.
where there's some concerns, right? Like up in this linebacking core and stuff like that. But when I look at these safeties, much like I did when I looked at TCU's, I see nothing but something that could be fantastic, right? You
Sure.
look at Amari Carter, you look at Bubba Bolden, and you
Yeah.
see just fantastic players all across that safety core.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. UNC game, they definitely struggled, because I said you get to the second level, and the safeties wouldn't
Yeah,
tackle, couldn't tackle. But yeah, you definitely have some. I mean, Bubba Bolden is, I think, their third safety, and
exactly.
he's their leading tackler. I mean, it's pretty amazing, right? You definitely have some talent in that back end. I think their starting cornerback went out a few weeks ago, out for the season, but their backup there has been really good. To Corey Couch, I believe his name is. He's been good there. He's got some tackles, got an interception, got pass deflections. DJ Ivy, it looks like when you watch the games, they're picking on him constantly. It feels like, and he was their starter. You have some interesting things there, but yeah, I mean, you got some safeties who definitely have some talent there. But it's an interesting Miami defense, I think.
Yeah. Here's the deal too. It's a fun Miami defense.
Right.
Whereas you might not get that many opportunities for a turnover chain, but
Right.
you might get just some high powered defensive line play, like you said up front. That's where it all comes down to, right? And
That's what I say. Yeah.
these two key players missing in Jalen Phillips and in Quincy Roach, it's going to be such a big loss for them. And both of them, coming out the other day and announcing that they weren't going to play, they're going to the NFL draft. Good for them. I mean, they are
Yeah.
going to get to the NFL draft, and they're gonna be really good players in the next level, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's what you talk about. Just such good players and such quality players. I mean, Jalen Phillips led them in sacks. You could see just impact very quickly from the size perspective, and just the ability to penetrate. There's plays where you see them, just the pressure that they get from around the edge, and that becomes difficult, right? And it's great to see them. But I mean, you got to respect the decision every time they leave. But that's a definitely tough loss for Miami.
Totally right. So now, Deep, when you sort of see the holistic view of this game, when you go into this Cheez-it Bowl matchup, right? Forget about the Cheez-its for a second. I know that's where your mind usually is. Get your mind out of the gutter. But I think this is one of the most interesting bowl matchups out there this year. And there's a couple ones. There's some New Year's Six bowls, obviously. Every year, those are really fascinating. But in particular, this year, I think this one sticks out as being one of the more fascinating games on the outside of that New Year's Six bowl. Looking in, what do you see from this game? Do you think this will be a close matchup? Do you think this will be a duel? or do you think this might be a blowout on either side?
Yeah, it could be. It's one of those things where it could go any way, either way. Because
Mhm.
to see the impact without Jalen Phillips and Quincy Roach is going to be interesting. See how they end up there. How this Miami O line that has been struggling in recent weeks can bounce back, if they can. If they can get better. Because
Yeah.
we've seen it over time, right? With OSU, first off, where it was just like a random week where things just started clicking in the Texas Tech game, and suddenly you were massive holes that came out of nowhere, right? Things can happen through practice and constantly having the same guys on the field and cohesion. Sometimes one lineman can change everything. It does happen, right? Or one lineman can deter everything. We've seen that as well. And so I wonder how that's going to go. Tylan Wallace being back is huge for OSU. I think we haven't even touched on, right? You just
Mhm.
talk. I mean, he is a problem in any way, shape, or form. You see him just match up on the outside, no matter who you're going up against. It doesn't even matter, right? It's just you just throw it up to him and get him the ball. Unless teams want to double cover him, there's really no single corner that has ever done anything for Tylan Wallace, to really stop him. And that's not a testament to just how like crazy, like he's gonna like outrun you, leave you in your shoes, make you fall.
Yeah.
That you can cover him perfectly and he could just go up and get it. That's the difficult thing, right? And that's that. You got Dylan Stoner playing his last one, which is big. Back to a slot position. I wonder if they flex him outside a little bit, see what Braden Johnson does. I guess. Right. I mean, I'm excited to see a Tay Martin, right? Maybe he takes over that X spot in this game. That would be interesting for
He
me.
loves the Cheez-it ball.
He does love the Cheez-it ball. Then you got we talked about several things, right? How does the defense match up? Maybe they neutralize Derek King from the beginning. Not even neutralize, but you slow down. Or you bring, or maybe you neutralize him, because we've seen Jim Knowles do that to some offenses, which is kind of crazy. I mean, look at Texas, right? If you look at the score at the end of the game, you see a loss for OSU. But if we talk about it, Texas wasn't able to move the ball down the field. What they could do was in the red zone score. But when you're giving the ball to the red zone, it's easy, right? When you're on off turnovers. But when you ask them to drive down the field, OSU wasn't, or Texas wasn't really able to do that. But yeah, you see that, and you talk about OSU's O line, you talk about OSU's D line, you talk about different things, matchups for Evan Jordan, so many different aspects, and we can guess all we want until until the ball's kicked off, and then we see how everything matches up and how everything comes together.
Exactly. Yeah. And but as we said, overall, as it stands, this is going to be one of the more fascinating bowl matchups. Because you're right, it could go either way. And it's going to be a showdown down there in Orlando, I believe, in the Cheez-it Bowl. Usually, I believe it's in Arizona sometimes, but this year it's in
I
Florida.
think it's Miami,
Or is it? But yeah, Miami. Excuse
yeah,
me. Oh wow, yeah, home field advantage, sort of, for the Miami Hurricanes. But we will see what happens all down there in late December. That's all we have for you today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to Deep in the Novo. We will have all your bowl coverage for you on Okali.com, at Okali Sports on Twitter, at Okali on Twitter, and all these other outlets. Have a great day. Have a great new year, and we will see you soon.